I'm going to record this. And I'm just going to give you a few words about what Toastmasters is. Toastmasters is a non-profit educational organization that helps us with communication skills and leadership skills. And I joined Toastmasters to improve my soft skills. And I see every single day how comfortable it is at work and anywhere just to communicate with people. And the good thing about this club, Interpersonal Toastmasters, is it meets every Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. Pacific time. And a uniqueness about this club is we get to expand our vocabularies when it comes to interpersonal communication, and we provide interpersonal communication tips because we want to know how to interact with people as well as at work, at home, everywhere. So those kind of tips we also provide. Now with that, I am going to give control to our presenter, Abhijit Joshi, to share the secrets to crafting your speech. Over to you, Abhijit.
Thank you so much, Jamal. 2 weeks ago, my friends, Kauthar is the president of Cisco Speaks, and Vaishnavi, she's the vice president of education for Cisco Speaks. We were huddling together. Kauthar said, how do we inspire people to give more speeches? It started some wheels turning in my head. I said, okay, let's plan on something. Let's plan a workshop where we can all sit together and try to see if we can craft some speeches. So today I'm going to share some secrets. I'm not an expert, but I have come across some people who have helped me to write some good inspirational speeches. I'm going to share that one technique. There are many ways of crafting a speech, but I'm going to share this one way of crafting a speech. This is going to be an interactive session, so ask me as many questions as possible because then I can share more information and more stories with you. My first question to you, Robert, what do Americans like in their food? Robert, can you hear me?
Yeah. What Americans like in their food?
Yes.
It's anywhere from like, I don't know, like most I would say like greasy stuff in a sense.
Yes.
How many like it fried and yeah.
What is there in that fried? That's one ingredient which is the most in there.
Like oil?
Oil, but what is another thing? Like French fries, what is there in that?
Well, yeah, like the potatoes and all that stuff.
Yes, potatoes. What is potato?
I guess butt or something, or butt, I don't know. What do you mean, like just the plants?
No. But what does potato have in it?
Like the carbohydrates?
Yes, carbohydrates is sugar, right?
Yeah.
So Americans love sugar in their food. Pallavi, what do Indians love the most in their food?
Spiciness?
No, but there's one more thing. We eat the most in India.
Beans. Rice?
No.
Beans.
Swati? We cannot eat the food if we don't have that thing, that one
Pickle.
ingredient. Huh?
Pickle?
Pickle? No, but there is one more. So what does pickle have the most? Like there is something it gives. Like there's this one.
Spices.
Spices is there, but another one.
Oil.
Oil. Another one.
Curry.
There's one more. If we don't have this ingredient, it becomes very tough to eat it. Mostly
Salt.
Americans. Huh?
Salt.
Perfect. See, people love the salt and sugar in their foods. These are the two ingredients. They're very important. Now, when it comes to speeches, what is that one ingredient that is very important? Can anyone guess?
Connection?
Connection, yes. What is there in the connection? How can we make a connection? Yes,
Story.
rapport. Yes, stories. But what do stories have? Why do we like stories?
So you can relate to it. Others can relate to it.
Perfect. But what is there? What is
personal
that?
Experience. A personal experience.
Personal experience. That's good. Personal experience.
And emotions.
Perfect, 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 perfect. The number one thing in our speeches is emotions, 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 emotions. If we have this in our speech, we can make that connection with the audience. Whenever we are telling a story, what we are doing is we are sharing the emotions, what is happening in the story. Always a story will have an emotion in it. So this is the main ingredient. Now I'm going to share other versions of emotions, like struggles. When we are having a struggle, when we share that, we are sharing ourselves with the audience. That really makes the connection with the audience. The next thing is vulnerability. Vulnerability is very powerful. If you can be vulnerable with the audience in front of them, you are connecting with them. And the last thing is inner dialogue. If I share what is happening in my head, like there is always a movie playing in my head. And when I share that inner dialogue, that makes a difference. And there is another name for inner dialogue. You can also share your analytical reactions that is happening in your head. Like, oh, in my head, I'm thinking, how am I going to present today? Which stories are going to be coming to my mind? Will I get all the stories? So I'm sharing what is happening in my head. So all these are parts of the emotions. If we are able to share this with the audience, we can make that connection. Any questions regarding this?
What is the difference between struggles and vulnerability?
Struggles and vulnerability. Okay, vulnerability is there are episodes in our life where we are ashamed of something. When I say that I made a mistake, I am becoming vulnerable in front of the audience. I have a story on that. I will talk. Well, I'll come to that later. But did that answer your question? Struggles is
Yeah.
something. It's like struggles is anything. Like suppose if I'm trying to train for an Ironman, it's like such a long race, and I'm not a good swimmer. So I'm trying to work on my swimming as much as I can. I'm sharing my struggle about swimming.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to the next thing. If we want to share our emotions, the one thing which we have to do is we have to bare our soul. If we don't bare our soul, the audience cannot connect with us. I want to share a story about Star. Star was a new Toastmaster, an amazing lawyer. She had the greatest delivery. She gave her icebreaker, the first speech in Toastmasters. I was amazed by her flawless delivery. In her speech, she talked about the pop singer, Dolly Parton. She never talked about herself in the speech. So if you want to make the speech memorable, bare your soul, because if you share yourself, it makes a stronger connection. I immediately realized Star is afraid to share herself with the audience. Any questions on bare your soul?
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you give an example of what kind of stories of ourselves we can share to connect with the audience?
Any story you can share with the audience as long as you are comfortable with it, you have grieved that emotion. Because if you are still tender in your heart, it might be tough to share that story. I want to give you an example, and I will also connect with that vulnerability part. It was Saturday morning. I was in second grade. It was 9:30 a.m. My fifth period, my science period, was about to start. My class teacher was Naidu madam. She was very strict. If you don't do what she said, she will take a ruler and just slap your hand. As I looked into my backpack, I realized that I don't have my science workbook. In that moment, I knew today is the day I am going to get punished. So you can share any kind of a story as long as you are comfortable with it. When you share your story, it kind of transports you there. You can feel those emotions, feel that fear.
Do you think it's ever possible to overdo it? Is there ever a danger of oversharing or overbearing your soul in a speech to the point where it doesn't do what you intended it to do?
One thing I want to tell you, Jim, is like normally when you give speeches, you give it many, many times. Okay. Like suppose if I have to give a speech, I will do it 5 times, 10 times, and I learn from what feedback people are giving. Once I get a feedback, it's like, okay, I can go deeper into it. Then I can go deeper into it. If I'm doing too much, I can modulate things. So the audience will give you a lot of feedback, and that feedback will help you to really take your story to the next level. I'll say this again and again. Good speeches are rewritten. You can never, ever in your life write a perfect speech in the first draft.
Is it the same thing as speaking from your heart?
Yes, it's the same thing as speaking from your heart. The more you speak from your heart, the more passion is visible, the more connection you will have with the audience. Bare your soul. I learned about this first time when I met Luisa Montalvo. Luisa Montalvo is the second place winner in the 2019 World Championship of Public Speaking. If you ever hear her speech, she was vulnerable in her speech. She said she made a mistake. And that vulnerability really touched me.
Vijit, I think Vivian has a question.
Yes.
Abhijit, I have a talk show and a lot of people call from all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't call it a speech. I have to deliver an opinion immediately, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not a classroom research. I just have to react to the question.
Yes.
So where do you connect rewriting a speech versus having to immediately, it's called ambush interview. You know that when you're a trainer,
Yes.
they just ambush interview you,
Yep.
you know? And this has been the great divide where my heart is for impromptu because you go out on a date, you want to get a job, or heaven forbid, you meet your future mother-in-law. Oh boy, no prepared speeches there. So I'm listening to you intently and you have a lot of wisdom. How do we connect one side of the brain, which is prepared, and the other side, which is impromptu? Where do we draw the line? Please help us all understand. Thank
Sure.
you.
This is a wonderful question. One thing I want to say is when you start sharing your stories with the audience, the more you share, the more stories you will have in your head. Now what happens? See, I've been a Toastmaster for nearly 3 years and I've given over 150 speeches. Now, yesterday, they asked me one impromptu question. Which are the 2 people you admire the most? Now what happens is in our head, we have so many stories. Immediately it connects to that one story and I pick that one story and share it during the impromptu speeches. So to get better at impromptu speaking, share more stories of yours and then you get better at it because you know how to connect those 2 dots.
Thank you. I love your story. I love your answer. Love you.
Thank you.
One more question, if I may
Yes.
ask.
Yes.
If I run out of personal stories,
Mhm.
is it possible to make up stories and put all the emotion and the action that the people will believe that is true?
For me, it's going to be very tough because when I am sharing a story, I see myself in that situation which has happened to me and I can visualize that and that gives me that emotion, that passion. I don't think so if I write a story which I have not lived through, I will have that passion.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bare your soul. The next thing, dig deeper. All of us have lived for more than 2 decades at least. So we don't have to write a story just which has happened in last 6 months or last 5 years. We can go back. As I shared with you, the first story, it was written when the story started when I was 6 years old. But the way I connected that story with the later part of my life. So I had a story which kind of went for like more than 2 or 3 decades in my life. So dig deeper. We have plenty of stories because every day is a story for us. So you don't have to look for just last week or last few weeks. You can go many decades back. Any questions regarding that? Dig deeper. And another thing in this is you also can go deeper into your emotions. What was happening? I will continue the story which I started telling in the next slide because it kind of connects to the point. So that's why I'm kind of stopping myself to share it with you, but I will share another story with you. I was in 12th grade. My mom was interested in fortune, my future actually. So she went to a fortune teller and the fortune teller told her, hey, your son is going to get amazing grades in 12th. And she came and told me. I believed it, like, oh yeah, I'm going to get amazing grades. I stopped studying. And when the grades came out, I could not get a good admission to a good school I wanted to. I was very disappointed. At that moment, it was a very important moment in my career and I didn't know what to do. I was visiting my aunt. My aunt said one thing which would change my life. My aunt said, you are a horse of a long race. You are a horse of a long race. Don't let that small blip in your life affect you. In other words, she said, life is not a sprint, life is a marathon. The reason this story came to me is because 2 years ago, I participated in an area contest. I'd worked on my speech a lot. I'd given that speech over 60, 70 times. But during the day of the contest, I was not very centered. I was psyching myself. I realized that when I was giving the speech, I was not myself. And that affected my delivery. And I knew I came in second place. I was very heartbroken. And as I was sitting in that emotion, it reminded me of my aunt. You are not the horse. You're the horse of a long race. Don't let the small blip affect you. So I connected again the episode which happened 2 years ago to the episode which happened in my 12th grade. How I was able to come out of it because of my aunt's wise words. So dig deeper. Any questions regarding this? Let's go to the next slide. Be brave. This is very tough, but I know you can do it. I'll share a story with you. The same story I started. I was 6 years old. I realized I don't have the science workbook in my backpack. I knew I was going to get punished. I again looked at my bag, but still there was nothing. But then I saw a workbook in my neighbor's bag. At that moment, I just grabbed that workbook, put it in front of my desk. When the period started, I just wrote it down. When the period was over, I took that workbook, put it in my backpack. I was so relieved that I saved myself from the punishment. A week later, I was caught because I had my neighbor's notebook, which had a transparent cover, and only one person in our class had that transparent cover, and that was Nirmal. My teacher called me in front of the class. She took her ruler, aimed at my calf. 1, 2, 3. But at that moment, I was more drowned in shame. This episode impacted my life for over 5 to 10 years. Every time me and my friends would have a fight, they would say, "You were that thief who stole that workbook." It took me some time to share that story. I had to make sure that I have really worked through each and everything. Then I could share that story with the audience. So be brave. I know you can do it. Any questions regarding this? Now comes the big exercise. See all these stories, why they stayed in my mind. It's because of that emotional spike I had. I was either fearful or I was disappointed because of the failure, or there was a lot of shame. And there was this another story. I came from India to do my master's. After 2 weeks, I was really missing my parents. I was feeling very lonely. In that moment, my fellow student, who had been in the university for more than a year, took me for a long drive. And his act of kindness changed. It changed me that day. His support meant a lot. So what spiked it was my emotion of loneliness. So whenever we have spike in our emotions, there is a story attached to it. And we can share that story with the audience. And the emotional spike can have different emotions. It's not just one type of emotion. So always connect with yourself what kind of emotion you want to share with the audience. Any questions regarding this? Emotional spike. I am going to give you 5 minutes to share your emotional spikes because those have buried stories in them. And those stories are worth telling. And I will connect that with I have another slide. How do you share that emotional spike and make a story out of it? Before we go into that, these are the various of emotions which we have. I also have written speeches about anger. I can share an example with you. I was in my bedroom. I was on the phone with my colleague, Dan. I ran into my living room to get my laptop. But in that moment, my brother yelled at me, said, "Turn off the bedroom light." In that moment, I said something I am ashamed to have said. That was a story that was a speech which I started. It helped me. It was a research and presenting speech, but that anecdote helped me to grab the audience's attention from the start. So you can have various emotions: anger, disappointment, fear. I was climbing the half dome. I was with 4 friends. Everything was hunky-dory until we reached the subdome. We're sitting down and we're going to climb, but we're just a little tired. As we're talking with the ranger said, only 70% of the people are able to go up. If you are in that 30%, it's okay. As I started climbing, after 15 minutes, I stopped and looked to the side. It was so deep. I thought, I'm going to fall down. I was completely frozen. So you can share various emotions. Anyone wants to share any stories?
Before I share, I have
Yeah.
a question
Sure,
first.
please.
You mentioned that we tell the story just to bring out the emotion, but is it just that's the goal? Because, like, for example, you said you told us the story about being brave to tell us that you stole something from your neighbor, and but do we have to care about the consequence that we expose ourselves? Like, it's just like in the interview, the interviewer asks you, what is your weakness? You always, just think of the way that you have corrected that weakness instead. But if just telling people our weakness will damage our reputation to go on, so how do we manage that?
Doris, my next slide answers that question.
Good.
So I'm going to tell you the answer, but it's the next slide.
Jumping the gun then.
Yes, no. It's all, everything should be connected, so yeah. Any other questions, anyone? Anyone wants to share any stories, anything? What emotional spikes have you had? And what emotion was it? Vivian, go ahead.
At the age of 70, which I am now,
Mhm.
I don't care about sharing embarrassing moments and how my life took a wrong turn, because when you're 70, you can say anything. Who cares? All right. I used to be a shy kid in a Catholic all-girls school from 1st grade to 6th grade. And then in 7th grade, I moved to an American school. What is the first lesson I learned? Simple. Coming from a very shy, reserved, all-girls school, we were taught to not be loud, to be prim and proper, and to be demure. And so when the teacher asked me, "What's your name? You're new here," I kind of mumbled, acting shy and demure, which I thought was the decent thing to do. So I said, "My name is Vivian Linden." It sounded like a mouse, right? And so she said, "Speak up, we haven't got all day." So I quickly learned my lesson. I must know who I'm with, not only where I'm coming from. I should not expect all of them to say, "Oh, she's a shy, demure, Catholic, all-girls school, Filipina." I'm like, what should they care? I mean, I went to an American school, so I should know how to be in an American school. So that's one lesson I learned. And I'd like to share that with you. I thought the world was about me. And boy, I quickly learned my lesson. Nah, it's not. And that's my gift to all of you at 70. Nah, the world's not about you. So, Abhijit, I'm sharing a shameful part of my life. Learn from my mistake, okay? Thank you for listening. I hope you can laugh about that.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you. I think this, you can make a really good speech out of it, and I would love to hear that.
Thank you.
Any other stories? Now I want to go to the next slide, because next slide packages everything together. Everything comes together in the next slide. So what is the next slide? What is the message I wanted to hear in that moment when I was having that emotional spike? See, whenever I am writing a story or a speech, my first thing is, what message? Why am I writing this? I want to come back to that story. Recently, or 5 years ago, I came across this book, Untethered Soul. In that book, there is this one chapter: remove your thorn. The one thing Michael Singer says is don't put a bandage on your thorn, because then it's going to hurt a lot. Now, when I didn't have the book, I was fearful. But instead of removing my thorn, I stole the book and put a band-aid on my thorn. I did not realize that it's going to hurt a lot. But now I have learned my lesson that no matter what, I'm going to face my fears, no matter what the consequences are. Doris, what do you think about that? How do you connect the message to the story?
You have learned the lesson and you have faced it and confront it. And yeah.
So remember, it's all about the message. I take my phone and the first thing I write it down, okay, this story has happened, but what message I wanted to hear in that moment. And when I share that message, which I wanted to hear, the audience connects with me because I'm passionate about that message. It makes the difference. Message is the most powerful thing. That is why we share our stories. I have another story, but I think I am running out of time, so I'm going to move on to the next slide. So this is a package of your speech layout. I told you, right, that I was giving an international speech 2 years ago. I wrote the speech. It was in a chronological order. I gave that speech maybe 30, 40, 50 times and practiced many times. But one of my evaluators said, start your speech in the middle of the action. It was March 6th, 2010. I was pedaling through New Zealand as part of my first Ironman triathlon. And then, bam, a disaster happened. This was my defining moment. What is your defining moment? See, I started the speech in the middle of the action. I also introduced the topic of my speech. When I started in the middle of the action, what effect did it have on you? Any feedback?
We wanted to know more.
Yes, yes. I already in my first 2 sentences, I have you with me. We are going together on the journey. In the body part, you develop the story. You overcome the obstacle. And then in conclusion, you share the lessons learned. And also if you have a call to action, you can add that. Any questions regarding the speech layout? This is one simple, yes, Doris, go ahead.
Does it have to have a lesson, a message to tell? For example, if your purpose is just to entertain the audience, so there's no message there. So why do we have to have a message at the for the speech?
Yes, so this is the part of the speech which resonates with me. It's like an inspirational speech. Whenever I speak, I want to share a message with it. That's my idea. But I agree with you, you can have a story without any message. You can but I can tell you, every story, you can connect it with the message, what you wanted to hear. There is something. If you dig deeper, you'll find something. I'll give you an example. Press Vasilov, 2012 champion. He was just changing a tire. Just changing a tire. And he had a message in changing a tire. Vivian, you had another question?
Yes, I'm a naturally curious person and I keep wanting to learn every day.
Yes.
I totally agree with everything I'm hearing. I totally love what you're saying because you said start somewhere in the middle. And I like that. You can see that's my brand. Hit them right away with the emotion. But you see, I'm here in a third world country, 7,100 islands depending on high or low tide. And they think in a linear manner. They always hit me on the head and say, start by telling them the 3 points that you want to discuss. How absolutely boring. I hate it. So it's a mutual disadmiration club. I don't like them and they don't like me. What? Can you imagine having a talk show? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Miss V from Show and Tell, and these are the 3 points I'm going to tell you today. Are you kidding? I'm going to lose all my viewers. So I love you.
Thank
They
you,
don't.
Vivian.
Now, tell me how to survive all these people who keep telling me to bore my audience by saying, tell them the 3 points that you're going to cover in your show. And I just say, no. So I'll tell them, I met Abhijit and the whole club, and I like them and they like me. So there, ha. So tell me, Abhijit, give me an answer. Tell me how to shut them up.
Just speak from your heart. You don't have to shut them up. Just speak from your heart and give them meta. So that's fine.
Thank you. I love you.
Thank you. Thank you. The next thing which I learned from my mentor, Dennis Dawson, is there is no writer's block. What Dennis says is if you want to write a speech, just glue yourself to the chair and don't get up until your first draft is ready. Remember, it's a draft. You're not writing a perfect speech. Great speeches are rewritten. You cannot write a perfect speech. And that has helped me a lot because sometimes for me, mornings are the best. I will Saturday, Sunday morning, I'll just stick myself to the chair and I will not get up until my first draft is ready. To summarize, I'll go through all the main points. First thing, secret ingredient in our speeches is emotions, emotions, emotions. Bare your soul. When you bare your soul, you can have some stories which can make a difference in people's lives. Dig deeper. You can connect over your lifetime. It does not have to be that small story. I like to connect my stories with different parts. Be brave. Remember, Toastmasters is a cheap therapy. Look at those emotional spikes. They have buried stories in them. Understand those emotions and realize what message you would have liked to hear in that moment. That message is very powerful. I write stories for messages. And just glue yourself to the chair and complete your first draft. Questions?
Yeah, BG. Can you just go over about start in the middle of the action? Can you
Sure.
give a little bit more example,
Yeah.
please?
I told you about that my speech from what is your defining moment? That speech I started in the middle. Like I said, it was March 6th, 2010. I was pedaling through New Zealand as part of my first Ironman. And then, boom, a disaster happened. So in 2, 3 lines, I told what was happening. So that is one story. And then the aunt story, which I was talking about, or even the remove your thorn, I started in the middle of the action. I said, my 6th period was about to start. And I realized I didn't have my workbook. I knew I'm going to get punished. This is my story of me not removing my thorn. So I've started in the kind of a middle of the action.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, I have a question. When
Yes.
you finished, okay, so you brought us, you started and you got us to the middle. Then what would be next? What would you say next in that
Oh,
particular?
next. Okay. Then I start with the, then I said, okay, I also give kind of, let me think about it. Okay. I said, this is my story of me not removing my thorn. Fellow Toastmasters and guests, okay, I'll just go back because I have so many speeches. I'll go back to my the Iron Man speech. I started with my training. I said I started with the story from the start. Okay, I said I started it like this. I'll share with you. My coach was from New Zealand. He was helping me in my swimming. As we were connecting with each other, he became an inspiration for me to do an Ironman in New Zealand, living on the east coast of United States. In September of 2009, I signed up for an Ironman in March. And that meant that I have to train in the brutal winter. So I started that story like that. And then I want to share another story with you. I told about the message which my aunt said, right? You are the horse of a long, you are a horse of a long life. So that story, the way I started it, I started with my area contest. It's like I prepared very hard, but when I gave the speech, I was not centered. And then I went back to the prior story of my 12th grade. Any other questions? Mona, anything? Good to see
I'm
you.
just very inspired by your style. I'm watching your pace and I'm watching your expressions, and I'm taking notes. So great job, Abhijit, and thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Mona. Like I want to show you what I do is I have 6 or 7 speeches which I want to write, and I just write down my speech titles or of the messages which I wanted to hear. And those, like one of the speech title which I have is "You have the power of words," because words are very powerful. I've made a mistake in my life when I've used those words in not such a right way. So I have stories with that. Then I shared a story of a small act of kindness which my friend did, which made a difference in my life when he took me for a drive when I was feeling lonely. So use your phone to take notes. Any other questions?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Another one.
Yes.
If we do this outline with opening body, so the conclusion will be just the lesson learned, right? I don't need to refer back to the story, or like on your example that about the book. So you don't need to go back and talk about, well, I grabbed my friend's book. So you just finalize with what you learn.
You can do that, but there is another technique called as book ending. Okay, book ending is connecting your first line to the last line. That technique is really good. If you can circle back and do a nice book ending, it can make a big difference in your story.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
I was wondering, so just go and go back a little bit what you just said, and
Yes.
then
Yes.
rephrase the lesson that you learned. Okay.
Yep.
Because it looks like in my club, they like when I go back and tell everything that I said and then give the call of action.
Yeah.
Okay, so they call book ending.
Book ending. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
Just one.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
My question is, how can we best use this information to help other people who may be afraid to give speeches? I'm a member of a club that has a lot of new members who have not stepped up to speak as yet, and we've tried to encourage them in as supportive a way as possible. How can we help them get over the hump?
Jim, that is a very good question. And one thing I want to share you. Be a role model. Do yourself. I've learned this life. Actually, I have a story regarding that. It's like when you take that step, people around you are watching you and they get motivated. And I can share a story about that. It was like 2009. I'm not a swimmer. I never learned swimming in my college or anything. I was in master swimmers. I was the slowest swimmer of all. But we had a race, 4.4 miles. And we were like 30 people in the club. The top 3 people were taking the part in the race, and I was taking part in the race. My coach said, he's not going to make it. I made it. And next year, we had like 18 people participate in the same race. So I know that we can make a difference. Be a role model.
There's one question in the chat. Deepa asked, how can I use this information in real life?
How can I use this information in real life? One thing I'm learning is the more real I am, the more connection I'm able to build with people. And that it's all about connections. The more stronger connections, you have stronger relationships. And that helps us to have a good life.
That's nice.
Back to you.
Anybody else have any questions?
I want to ask, when is his next speech?
I'll write down. I've started thinking about it. Sometimes I try to give one new speech a month. Since May of 2020, I write, at least give something new, at least a workshop or a new speech. So next month for sure.
Thank you so much, everyone. We learned a lot from Abhijit Joshi today. This was amazing. This has opened my heart also to speak and write personal stories, because our personal stories are unique to us and we have so much to share. And agree, I totally agree with everyone. We all loved it. This was a great presentation. Now with that, I'm going to ask the guests for their feedback. So I'm going to start with you, Robert. Robert, how was your experience today?
It was really nice. I like how when you guys like added everybody to it, you kind of talked to like the guests and everything, see how they're doing. Actually, I didn't realize that this was like a Toastmasters like meeting type of thing. I thought it was more like I was just gonna listen to someone talk and not like interact with whatever. So, but no, it was really nice. And the fact I like the that he asked questions. Like he would the speaker he would talk a little bit and then he would ask some questions and he would talk a little bit and ask questions for clarifying questions. It was really good. Different than I've ever seen.
Awesome. And continue to come to our club,
Mhm.
Interpersonal Toastmasters, and we would love to have you. So this
Thanks.
was a special event.
Yeah.
We all wanted to learn how to write speeches.
Mhm.
Jmol, I have a quick question. This is Deepa.
Hi, Deepa.
Hi. Thank you for organizing this. This is wonderful. And also thank you for spreading the word around in the college alumni group and all of that. So do you bring guests like every week or is it different every week?
Yeah, I can share that information with you. So this is a Toastmasters club, and in Toastmasters club, we do our prepared speeches. And when it comes to bringing in guests to speak about topics like this, we do that. It depends on the members. If the members want it, we will definitely bring in speakers. And apart from that, Toastmasters. Are you new to Toastmasters, Deepa?
No, I I was part of a Toastmasters club when I was at realtor.com in my last job. So we had like about 5 or 6 companies join together to run this club. And I was that was like in those days everything was pre-pandemic and things were face to face. So I've done that and I've learned a lot. I would really like to continue. And I happened to hear about a few of them during the day. That does not work for me. This one is great because it's like on a Thursday when things are winding down and awesome. So yeah, maybe we can connect offline as well.
Yes. This is the perfect place to come and learn more, and we grow together. There's so much we can grow together and learn from each other. Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So Abhijit, do you want to, would you mind putting your LinkedIn link here so we can kind of,
Sure.
Connect with you offline and things like that if you have questions?
Definitely. I'll also put in my email address.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Abhijit, do you have any YouTube channel that we can maybe learn more from you or anything like that?
I have YouTube channel. I have 2 speeches I've uploaded. So the one speech which I said, what is your defining moment? And then there is another speech, Smell of Life, which is a humorous speech. So it's under the name Abhi Joshi. And if you say, what is your defining moment? You will find me.
Perfect.
And we'll get him more in this club. There is so much he can offer for us, and so much we can learn from him.
Thank you so much, Jmol, for putting this together.
Thank you. I'll get in touch with you. Swati, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question regarding the speech.
Yes.
First of all, a great thank you for Abhijit. It was a great session, and I'm planning to give my speech next week. So it kind of I had it at the right moment to attend your speech. So you were talking about digging deeper, right? Like to go back to connect with the audience. And also, what if we do not remember a lot of our memories? Like we only remember what we have, like what happened recently, or we feel that we do not have interesting stories in the end. Like how do we connect with the audience in that case?
Swati, see, we always have emotional spikes. List down the times you had emotional spikes.
Okay.
And what happened in that case, and what message you would like to hear in that moment. That will make the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Then share that message with the audience with that story.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Because that will connect to it. And emotional spikes, those are called sanskaras. We will retain them. We will have them in our memory. So it can be just, you don't have to go back very back. You can just, sometimes I talk about the speeches which has happened recently in the last couple of years or last 5 years. Like Smell of Life happened in 2013. So 2014, So it depends upon how far you have to go.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Sure.
So Harshida wrote, Harshida, you want to speak what you wrote? Or
Am I audible now?
yes, yes.
Okay. So first of all, thanks for whoever was responsible for putting this on Meetup. I really appreciate, and because of that, I'm able to join. And secondly, Abhijit, it was an amazing session. My biggest takeaway, as I mentioned, is not to get up until you finish the draft. And I think a lot of us have this anxiety, or we end up overthinking about the content. But if we just sit and we realize, or we dwell on the fact that it is just a draft, it is not what I'm exactly going to speak in front of people, I think it takes off a lot of pressure. So thank you so much.
Very, very true. Remember, it's all about more stage time, stage time, stage time. And people in Toastmasters help you to make your speeches better. You don't have to write a perfect speech. They will help you to make your speech better.
Totally agree with that. And Geeta Agrawal, how was your experience today?
Yeah. So no, it's great actually. You know what? There's so many things running in my mind, and some of the things where I'm realizing, you have it, just go for it, right? And sometimes we do hold back, right? And I wanted to check with Abhijit, how long does it take to, put your first draft out there? Because sometimes even writing one page may take hours, couple of hours. So then I wonder, no, I'm not good at it, forget about it. So I just want to understand, because I do a lot of, as I think Harshita was mentioning, right? We do overthink and want to do the best. And sometimes it doesn't happen in one go. So, just to get some idea, right? How long does it? And we are so hung up on, right, using the right verbiage, right? Not just the content, but, the language and the whole flow and all that, right? So how long does it take?
Geeta, I'll give you a story, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I was with Lindy McLean. She's my soul sister. And she told me, share that message with the audience which you wanted to hear. I went to a meditation retreat in 2019. It was a 10-day retreat. On the second day of the retreat, I signed up for cleaning the bathrooms and the toilets. I was trying to clean them as much as I can, but I never thought that they were clean enough. So I was torturing myself. Did I do a good job? 10 days later, when the retreat was done, another meditator came to me and said, hey, you were the person who cleaned the bathrooms on the second day? I said, yes, I was the person. He said, I'd never seen the bathrooms that cleaned. Now this story happened. And then when I was with Lindy McLean, she said, share that message with the audience, which you wanted to hear. And the message I wanted to hear in that story was that I am enough, you are enough, and we are enough. Now, as soon as I get the message and the story together, I can write that draft. And sometimes I will just play it in my head. And then once I decide, okay, this is the day I'm going to write my draft, I'll sit down, I'll complete it. Doesn't have to be perfect. So I've connected the story and the message.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think this is, it does help me, especially you are enough, right? And we just sometimes are just wondering too much about it, right? And no, this is great. And one thing I would like to share, and I believe you were asking earlier, and I think some of the folks did have question around, right? Sometimes we may end up sharing too much information, right? So I think I heard this, my intent of, just joining this was not to give out speeches, but more like, connections, right? In general, right? Connecting with people, right? My teams, or in general, wherever, right? We are in our life. Now, it's not just about the official work, but even outside.
Yes.
And I have felt that, some of the times when people are going through some things, if you have ever faced something on similar side, right? I end up sharing my story, and which I'm not going to share with the whole world, but at that point, sharing with those folks, I've seen it has brought a lot of relief to people when they say, oh, shoot, you have gone through a lot. My problem is not that big, right? So I have done that. I have, and unknowingly I was doing it. So today with your whole message about how you should go about doing it and how, you need to take the lesson out and all that, I tend to do that without knowing I'm doing it, right? And so good to hear that, probably I'm on right track. And, this was really a good session. Thanks a lot for, sharing all this. It's definitely helping all of us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Geeta, I want to add one thing is all of us have wisdom and we can share with all of us. But you can share it with us.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions, comments, feedback?
I have one more question. If he can share with us, how can we memorize the speech? Because for him, seems like the story just comes so natural. And I notice when I'm preparing my speech, I take a lot of time thinking, and sometimes the idea comes like in after 2-3 days. So is that he say, don't leave the chair until you're done. But sometimes it takes 2-3 days, and oh, maybe I should say this, or maybe I should add this. Is there any way that we can just come with the ideas immediately? And when it comes to deliver the speech, is any way that we can just memorize any techniques, anything that you can suggest?
Yes. See, speech, if you have a draft of a speech, it's evolving. It's always changes. So the way I memorize my speech is I will divide. My speech is suppose 600 words. I will divide my speech into 100 words. I do 100 words 10 times. I memorize it. Next day, I'll go do another 100 words and I'll put the 200 together and do it again 10 times. That is the way I would memorize the speech. But if I change my speech, then I can change my sentences because I've worked on it so much. I know the story in and out that I can make changes at the last moment. This I was doing like 2 years ago. Now it's changing because I've practiced the speeches so much. The more you practice, the more I feel I get better at it. Now I can practice the story in my head, and what I do is just before delivering, I would practice it 3 times. I'll check my time, how I'm doing, and then I'll deliver that speech. And then I give my speeches at least 5 to 10 times. So it's always evolving. So you can do any way you want. You can memorize the speech or you can practice it enough because you have played the story in your head and then deliver it.
Perfect. Can you just give one more tip about book ending that we talked earlier, please?
I gave a speech. Okay, I started with a phone call. I said, hey, Raj, let's go to the bank. I need $5,000 right now. And then when I ended the speech, I said, if you realize the power in you, you can also earn that $5,000. So I kind of bookended, kind of circled what I started my speech with.
Perfect.
For an entire month.
Just $8.99.
And the first month is free.
Any other questions?
Any other questions, anyone? Hannah, I haven't heard from you. How was your experience? Oh, Jaydeep just said, need to drop. Great presentation, Abhijit. Jaydeep, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, just wanted to say that I really enjoyed it. Very insightful. And yeah, really digging deep can be really good to think back and now that it's something that's happened many years later, you might have a different perspective on it as well. So, that can really turn into a good story much later.
Totally agree. Yeah. And everyone, please come back next week. We have amazing session next week as well. It'll be like seasoned Toastmasters who will be giving their wisdom, or it'll be like an interactive session. So either we will have a regular meeting or we will have a workshop. So I hope this time works for you, and we would like you to come back to the club, Interpersonal Toastmasters. I would like to say that our club is chartering soon. So each and every one of you, it'll be great that if you could be join the club and be a member and work on your personal goals of improving your communication skills. I can share more information of what it takes to be a member. It's a membership process, and as you know, Toastmasters is the best place where we can learn the skills that we need to improve our communication and leadership goals. With that, I'm going to adjourn this meeting, but please stay back and feel free to chat, and any questions that you have, feel free to ask. Yes, go ahead, Abhijit.
Anyone who wants any feedback on the scripts, I can share your script with me. I'll give you feedback.
Thank you, Abhijit.
Thank
Great
you.
job. And thank
Thank
you,
you, Doris.
Timo.
That's really generous of you, Abhijit.
Can you stop recording? Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure.